The metal chair was too small for Commander Velthar Crix. His forearms hung awkwardly in the chains that bound him to the seat. The room smelled of cleaning chemicals and fear. 3 investigators sat across from him at a long table. Their faces showed disgust when they looked at him. "You stand accused of war crimes against the human colony worlds," said the lead investigator. Her voice was cold and formal. "The Galactic Council wants to know what happened during the Terran Vorthok War." Velthar shifted in his chair. The metal scraped against the floor. His once proud military uniform was gone. Now he wore simple gray prison clothes. The decorations he had earned over 800 years of service were stripped away. "War crimes?" Velthar's voice was rough. He had not spoken much in the 6 months since his capture. "You think I committed war crimes against the humans?" The second investigator leaned forward. "Our reports show massive casualties among human civilians, entire colonies burned, children killed. The Vorthak fleet showed no mercy." "No mercy." Velthar repeated the word slowly. A bitter laugh escaped his throat. "You want to know about mercy? You want to know about war crimes? Then listen carefully, because what I tell you will change everything you think you know about humans." The third investigator activated a recording device. "State your name and rank for the record." "Commander Velthar Crix, former fleet commander of the Vorthak 3rd Battle Group. I served my people for 847 cycles." His voice grew stronger as he spoke. "I fought in 12 major conflicts across the galaxy. I conquered 4 star systems. I commanded over 50,000 warriors. And you led the attack on human space." "Yes." Velthar's eyes grew distant. "We thought it would be easy. The humans had only been in space for 50 years. They had weak ships and small armies. Our intelligence said they were soft, peaceful traders and farmers who had never seen real war." The lead investigator made notes on her data pad. "But the war lasted 3 years. 3 years." Velthar's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 years of horror. Not horror from what we did to them. Horror from what they did to us. What they became. Explain." Velthar closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with something the investigators had never seen in a Vorthak warrior before. Fear. The first battle was at Proxima Centauri, a small mining station. Nothing important, just a few thousand humans digging rocks from asteroids. We sent 3,000 of our best warriors. The humans had maybe 200 defenders. 200 against 3,000, the second investigator said. "That does not seem fair." "Fair?" Velthar laughed again. "You still do not understand. We thought we were being generous. We thought 200 humans would surrender when they saw our ships. We were wrong." The room fell silent except for the hum of the recording device. Their commander was a human named Lee Jae-won, a captain in their Marine Corps. When we demanded surrender, he sent back a message. Just 2 words. "Come take it, Velthars." 4 hands clenched into fists. We surrounded the station, cut off their supplies, blocked all escape routes, standard siege tactics. We had done this 100 times before. Most species surrender after a few days without food or power. But not the humans. Not the humans. Velthar shook his head. They fought for 6 days. 6 days without sleep, without proper food, with wounds that should have killed them. They fought until our warriors started having nightmares. The lead investigator looked up from her notes. "Nightmares? Have you ever seen a human fight when they think they are going to die?" Velthar asked. "Not fighting to win, not fighting to survive, fighting because death does not matter anymore, fighting because the mission is more important than their own lives." The investigators exchanged glances. Captain Lee Jae-won was shot through the chest on the 2nd day. A Vorthak plasma rifle burns at 3,000 degrees. It should have killed him instantly. Instead, he used his own blood to mark targets for his soldiers. He kept fighting for 4 more days with that wound. That is impossible. The third investigator said, I have the battle recordings. Velthar gestured with one of his chained hands. Your own council demanded all evidence be preserved. Watch them if you dare. Watch a human medic perform surgery on wounded soldiers while enemy fire burns the air around him. Watch human engineers fix damaged weapons with tools made from scrap metal and dead bodies. The room grew colder. But the worst part was not their refusal to die. The worst part was how fast they learned. On the first day, our tactics worked perfectly. We knew where they would be. We knew how they would fight. By the third day, they had changed everything. Changed how. They started using our own weapons against us, not just picking up dropped rifles. They understood how our technology worked after seeing it once. They modified our plasma cannons to fire different types of energy. They hacked our communication systems and sent false orders to our ships. Velthar's voice became quieter. By the 5th day, they were predicting our moves before we made them. Captain Lee Jae-won seemed to know which corridor we would attack next, which wall we would try to break, which soldier would lead the charge. It was like fighting ghosts who could see the future. You are exaggerating. Am I? Velthar met the investigator's eyes. On the 6th day, we finally broke through their defenses. Do you know what we found? The investigators waited. Empty rooms. They had evacuated during the night. All 200 defenders, along with 3,000 civilian miners. They took them through tunnels we did not know existed. Tunnels they had carved during the siege with mining equipment we thought was destroyed. But you said they fought for 6 days. They did fight. 25 humans stayed behind to make us think the station was still defended. 25 volunteers who knew they would die. They held off 3,000 Vorthak warriors long enough for everyone else to escape. The recording device hummed in the silence. When we finally found them, they were still fighting. Still shooting at us with damaged weapons and homemade explosives. Captain Lee Jae-won was there, still alive, still giving orders, still refusing to surrender. What happened to him? Velthar was quiet for a long moment. We captured him. Barely. It took 40 of our warriors to bring down one wounded human, and even then, he managed to activate a bomb that destroyed half our equipment. The lead investigator made more notes. This is just one battle, she said. One small engagement. Yes, Velthar agreed. One small battle that changed everything. Because after Proxima Centauri, we realized we were not fighting farmers and miners. We were fighting something else. Something that had been pretending to be peaceful. What do you mean? Velthar looked at each investigator in turn. I mean that humans are not what they appear to be. They are not a young species learning about war. They are an old species that has been preparing for war their entire existence, and we woke them up. The investigators looked uncomfortable. The lead investigator set down her data pad and stared at Velthar for a long moment. You mentioned that Proxima Centauri changed everything. Tell us about the next engagement. Velthar's eyes grew distant again. His forearms trembled slightly in their chains. Haven Colony, a farming world in the Outer Rim. 3 million human civilians growing food for other colonies. No military value, no strategic importance. Just farmers and their families living. Quiet lives. Why did you attack a farming world? Because we thought it would be easy. Velthar's voice was bitter. After Proxima Centauri, my superiors wanted a quick victory. Something to show our people that humans could be defeated. Haven Colony seemed perfect. The second investigator leaned forward. How many defenders did they have? According to our intelligence, maybe 500 local militia, farmers with hunting rifles, a few retired soldiers, nothing that could stop a real military force. How many ships did you send? 2 full battle fleets, 60,000 warriors, enough to conquer a major world. Velthar closed his eyes. It should have been over in a few hours, but it was not. No, It lasted 3 months. 3 months of hell. The room fell quiet, except for the soft hum of the recording device. The siege began normally. We surrounded the planet and cut off all communications. No ships could enter or leave the system. We demanded surrender within 24 hours. What was their response? Silence. Complete silence for 18 hours. Then something appeared on our scanners, a single human fighter craft, old and damaged. It launched from the planet's surface and flew straight at our flagship. Velthar opened his eyes and looked at the investigators. We thought it was a suicide attack. One desperate pilot trying to damage our command ship. We let it come close just to show the humans how hopeless their situation was. What happened? The pilot was a human woman named Park Bo-young, a lieutenant in their planetary defense force. She flew past our flagship without firing a shot. Then she disappeared. Disappeared? Into the asteroid field at the edge of the system. We sent fighters after her, but they found nothing. We assumed she had crashed or fled to another star system. Velthar's voice grew quieter. 6 hours later, one of our supply ships exploded. A cargo vessel carrying food and ammunition for our forces. It was destroyed while traveling between our ships and the planet. An attack? We thought it was a malfunction. Space battles are dangerous. Ships explode sometimes. But then another supply ship was destroyed. Then another, all in different locations, all at different times. The third investigator made notes on his data pad. Lieutenant Park Bo-young was using the asteroid field like a maze. She would hide her small fighter among the rocks, wait for our ships to pass, then attack from behind. One shot from an old laser cannon, then back into hiding. One pilot against your entire fleet. One pilot who understood something we did not. She was not trying to win battles. She was trying to win the war. Velthar shifted in his chair. Every supply ship she destroyed made our position weaker. No food meant hungry soldiers. No ammunition meant empty weapons. No fuel meant ships that could not move. She was cutting our throat one small cut at a time. Why did you not send more fighters to stop her? We tried. We sent hundreds of fighters into the asteroid field. But Park Bo-young knew that space better than we did. She had grown up on Haven Colony. She had flown through those asteroids since she was a child. The lead investigator looked up from her notes. Our fighters would get lost in the maze of rocks. Some would crash into asteroids they could not see. Others would be ambushed by Park Bo-young when they thought they were hunting her. She turned. Our own numbers against us. How? She would attack one of our fighters and then disappear. When more fighters came to help, she would attack them too. But she never fought fair battles. Always hit and run. Always one shot, then gone. Our pilots started seeing her everywhere, even when she was not there. Velthar's voice became hollow. After 2 weeks, our fighters were afraid to enter the asteroid field. Afraid of one human woman in an old fighter craft. My pilots, who had conquered dozens of worlds, were having nightmares about a ghost in the rocks. But she was just one person who was learning faster than we could adapt. Every time we changed our tactics, she found a new way to counter them. Every time we thought we had her trapped, she would escape and destroy another ship. The investigators exchanged glances. Meanwhile, the siege of the planet was not going well either. The human defenders were not acting like farmers with hunting rifles. They were fighting like professional soldiers. How so? They had turned the entire planet into a fortress. Not obvious fortifications that we could see from space. Hidden bunkers and tunnels. Weapons caches buried in farm fields. Communication networks that we could not detect or jam. Velthar's 4 hands clenched into fists. Worst of all, they had a demolitions expert named Kim Tae-ho, a sergeant who understood explosives better than our own engineers. He was turning our siege weapons against us. Explain. We would fire plasma cannons at their positions. Normal species would be destroyed or driven away. But Sergeant Kim Tae-ho would study the impact craters, learn how our weapons worked. Then he would build copies using scrap metal and farm equipment. That is impossible. I have battle recordings that prove it. Kim Tae-ho created plasma cannons from tractor parts and fertilizer. He made guided missiles from weather monitoring equipment. He built electronic warfare systems from communication satellites. The room grew colder, but that was not the worst part. The worst part was that he was teaching other humans to do the same thing. What started as one expert became dozens of experts, then hundreds. They were sharing knowledge. More than sharing. They were improving on each other's work. One human would create a new weapon, and within hours, 10 other humans had made it better. They were evolving their technology in real time during the battle. Velthar's voice dropped to a whisper. By the end of the first month, they had weapons we did not understand. Energy shields made from mining equipment, cloaking devices built from farm machinery, automated defense systems that seemed to think for themselves. What about Lieutenant Park Bo-young? Still out there, still hunting our supply ships, still appearing where we least expected her. But now she was not alone. Not alone? The humans had somehow gotten more fighters off the planet. Old cargo ships converted into attack vessels, mining equipment turned into weapons platforms. Even civilian transports armed with improvised weapons. Velthar closed his eyes. Park Bo-young was teaching them. Every trick she had learned, every tactic that had worked, she was sharing with other human pilots. Our supply lines collapsed completely. So you retreated? We could not retreat. My superiors demanded victory. They sent reinforcements. More ships, more warriors, enough firepower to glass the entire planet. The investigators waited. The reinforcements never arrived. What happened to them? Park Bo-young and her pilots happened to them. They had learned to coordinate their attacks. Not just random hit-and-run strikes anymore. Organized battle plans that cut our reinforcements apart before they could reach the planet. Velthar opened his eyes. The final blow came from someone we had not expected. A human medic named Choi Min-ho. Just a private in their militia. His job was supposed to be treating wounded soldiers. What did he do? He infiltrated our command ship, somehow got aboard during a supply transfer. We found him 2 days later in our computer core uploading a virus into our systems. How did a medic learn computer programming? That is what we asked him when we captured him. His answer still gives me nightmares. The investigators leaned forward. He said that human medics learn everything, not just medicine, electronics, so they can repair medical equipment, chemistry, so they can create medicines from available materials, engineering, so they can build surgical tools from scrap, computer, programming, so they can operate advanced medical systems. A medic who was also a computer expert. A medic who was also an engineer, a chemist, a programmer, and a spy. He had been planning his infiltration for weeks, learning our security, procedures by watching our supply transfers, studying our technology by examining captured equipment. Velthar's voice became barely audible. The virus he planted turned our own automated defense systems against us. Our ships started shooting at each other. Our communication systems sent false orders. Our navigation computers directed ships into asteroid fields. The siege ended. The siege became a disaster. Half our fleet was destroyed by our own weapons. The other half was picked apart by human fighters who seemed to know our every move. We retreated with less than 20% of our original force. The lead investigator set down her stylus. You lost 60,000 warriors to farmers and militia? No, Velthar said quietly. We lost 60,000 warriors to humans who were pretending to be farmers and militia. There is a difference. What do you mean? I mean that after Haven Colony, we realized something terrible. Humans do not have soldiers and civilians. They only have humans who are currently fighting, and humans who are not currently fighting, but they are all ready for war. The third investigator put down his datapad and stared at Velthar with growing concern. Commander, your reports describe humans as extraordinarily capable warriors, but surely your fleets had advantages in space combat. Better technology, larger ships? Velthar's laugh was bitter and hollow. Better technology. Yes, we thought so too, until we met Admiral Yoon Dahi at the Battle of the Shattered Moons. The investigators waited as Velthar gathered his thoughts. His 4 arms trembled in their chains. The Kepler-186 system was strategic. 5 planets rich in rare metals, a major trade route between human colonies. If we controlled it, we could cut their supply lines and force them to surrender. How large was your fleet? 12 battle groups, over 800 ships, 2 million warriors. The largest Vorthak fleet ever assembled. Velthar's voice grew quiet. We expected total victory within days. And the human fleet? 160 ships, maybe 300,000 crew members. They were outnumbered 5-1. Velthar closed his eyes. We thought it would be a massacre. The lead investigator made notes on her data pad. The system had been mined heavily for decades. The asteroid belt was thick with debris from broken moons and mining operations, thousands of rocks floating in space, some as large as cities. Good cover for smaller ships, the second investigator observed. That is what Admiral Yoon Dahi was counting on. When our fleet arrived, her ships were scattered throughout the asteroid field, hidden among the rocks like predators waiting for prey. Velthar opened his eyes and stared at the investigators. We had fought in asteroid fields before. Standard tactics called for slow, careful movement. Stay in formation, watch for ambushes, clear each section methodically. But Admiral Yoon Dahi did not follow standard tactics. Admiral Yoon Dahi wrote new tactics while we watched. She turned the entire asteroid field into a weapon. The room fell silent except for the hum of the recording device. The battle began when her flagship, a heavy cruiser called the Indomitable, appeared from behind a large asteroid and fired on our lead ships. A normal commander would have fired and then retreated to a safe distance. But not Admiral Yoon Dahi. She fired and then flew straight at our battle line. Full speed, through the middle of our formation. Her ship was taking hits from dozens of plasma cannons, but she did not turn away. Velthar's voice became strained. We thought she had gone insane. No commander would fly directly into enemy fire like that. It was suicide. But it was not suicide? It was calculation. While our ships were focused on the Indomitable, the rest of her fleet attacked from 6 different directions. They had been moving into position while we were distracted by her charge. The third investigator looked up from his notes. The asteroids provided cover for their approach. By the time we realized what was happening, human ships were firing at us from all sides. But that was just the beginning. The beginning? Admiral Yoon Dahi was using the asteroids like a 3-dimensional maze. Her ships would appear, fire, then disappear behind rocks. When we tried to follow them, we would find empty space. Velthar shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but the human ships would reappear somewhere else entirely. Behind us, above us, below us. It was like fighting, ghosts that could teleport. They were using micro-jumps? Micro-jumps through an asteroid field. Do you understand how dangerous that is? One miscalculation and your ship crashes into a rock at faster than light speed. Most species would never attempt it. The investigators exchanged glances. Human pilots were making micro-jumps with precision measured in meters. Threading between asteroids with clearances smaller than their own ships, they were performing maneuvers that our computers said were impossible. Perhaps their computers were more advanced? No, Velthar said firmly. I saw the recordings later. Human pilots were calculating those jumps in their heads, using instinct and experience instead of computer assistance. They were flying by, feel through situations that would require hours of calculation. The lead investigator frowned. After the first hour, we had lost 30 ships, and they had lost maybe 5. But Admiral Yoon Dahi was not finished. She started using the asteroids themselves as weapons. How? Gravitational slingshots. Her ships would approach large asteroids at high speed, use their gravity to change course, and launch the rocks at our fleet. Asteroids the size of buildings, moving at incredible velocity. Velthar's voice dropped to a whisper. We had to dodge both enemy ships and flying mountains. Our formations broke apart. Ships scattered to avoid the incoming rocks. That was exactly what Admiral Yundahi wanted. Divide and conquer? Worse than that. Once our ships were separated, her fighters began hunting them individually. Human pilots in small, fast ships that could maneuver between the asteroids like fish swimming through coral. The second investigator made more notes. But the most disturbing part was how they coordinated their attacks. No radio communications that we could detect. No battle computers giving orders. They seemed to know what each other was thinking. Telepathy? Not telepathy. Something else. Experience. Training. They had practiced these maneuvers so many times that they could predict what their allies would do without any communication at all. Velthar's 4 hands clenched into fists. By the second day, we were losing ships faster than we could count them. Not to superior firepower, but to superior tactics. Admiral Yundahi was fighting a different kind of war than we had ever seen. Different how? She was not trying to destroy our fleet directly. She was trying to make us destroy ourselves. Every move we made played into her plans. Every formation we used had a weakness she could exploit. The room grew colder. The turning point came on the 3rd day. We were down to maybe 600 ships, still outnumbering the humans 3-1. We thought we could still win through sheer numbers. But you could not? Admiral Yundahi made a decision that still haunts my dreams. She ordered her damaged ships to ram ours. The investigators looked shocked. Not desperate suicide attacks, calculated kinetic strikes. Each collision was planned to create debris fields that would channel our remaining ships into specific areas. Velthar's voice became barely audible. Human crews were sacrificing their lives to create tactical advantages for their allies. Pilots would aim their dying ships at our vessels with mathematical precision, turning their own destruction into weapons. That is horrible. Horrible and effective. Each ramming attack created debris that made certain areas of the asteroid field impassable. Admiral Yundahi was reshaping the battlefield by sacrificing her own people. The third investigator put down his stylus, but the debris also trapped our ships in smaller and smaller areas, like herding animals into a pen. Once we were concentrated, in the spaces she wanted, her remaining ships picked us apart with coordinated attacks. How many ships did you lose? All of them. Velthar's voice was flat and emotionless. 800 ships. 2 million warriors. The entire fleet was destroyed or captured. And the human losses? Maybe 60 ships. 70,000 crew members. Most of them volunteers who chose to ram our vessels. The investigators sat in shocked silence. Admiral Yundahi won by treating her own people as acceptable losses in an equation that guaranteed victory. She calculated exactly how many ships she could afford to sacrifice and still defeat us. That is monstrous. Is it? Velthar looked at each investigator in turn. Or is it the ultimate expression of tactical thinking? She understood that war is mathematics. Resources versus objectives. Costs versus benefits. But those were her own people, yes. And they understood what she was asking of them. They chose to die because they trusted her calculations. They believed their deaths would save more lives in the long run. Velthar closed his eyes. That is when I realized we were not fighting. A normal species. Normal beings fight to live. Humans fight to win. Even if winning means dying. What happened to Admiral Yundahi? She survived. Her flagship was one of the few human ships that made it through the battle intact. The last thing our sensors recorded was her ship jumping away to rejoin the human fleet. To fight more battles? To plan the invasion of our homeworld. Because Admiral Yundahi had proven something terrible. She had shown that humans could defeat any force, no matter how large, if they were willing to pay the price. The lead investigator looked at her notes. You make them sound like machines, cold calculators who do not value life. No, Velthar said quietly. That is what makes them so frightening. They do value life. They grieve for their dead. They honor their sacrifices. But they understand that sometimes the greatest act of love is to die for something larger than yourself. And that makes them dangerous? That makes them unstoppable? The lead investigator pushed back from the table and stared at Velthar with growing alarm. The other two investigators had stopped taking notes. The room felt cold despite the heating system. "Commander," she said carefully, "you are describing humans as if they are not a normal species, as if they are something else entirely." Velthar's 4 eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "That is exactly what I am describing. And the invasion of Vorthak Prime proved it beyond all doubt. Tell us about the final battle." "It was not a battle." Velthar's voice was hollow. "It was something I do not have words for. Something that changed how I understand the concept of warfare itself." The second investigator leaned forward despite his obvious fear. "The human fleet arrived at our homeworld 6 months after the Battle of the Shattered Moons. We expected them to bombard our cities from orbit. Standard conquest tactics: destroy military targets, demand surrender, occupy the planet. But they did not. General Sung Hua Young was commanding the invasion force. She did something that no military commander in galactic history had ever attempted." Velthar paused, as if gathering courage to continue. "Instead of attacking our defenses, she attacked our minds." The investigators exchanged worried glances. "I do not understand," the third investigator said. "General Sung Hua Young had spent months studying our species, not just our military capabilities, our culture, our psychology, our fears, our beliefs, our social structures, everything that made us who we were. Intelligence gathering is standard. Military practice. This was not intelligence gathering. This was complete psychological analysis of an entire civilization. The humans had learned more about us than we knew about ourselves." Velthar's voice grew strained. "The invasion began with human ships broadcasting messages to our population. Not demands for surrender. Not threats of destruction. Stories. Stories? Stories about human history. Tales of their wars against each other. Descriptions of weapons they had built. Technologies they had developed. Battles they had fought." The lead investigator frowned. "Why would they tell you about their own capabilities?" "Because General Sung Hua Young understood something about the Vorthak mind. We are a proud warrior species. We respect strength. We fear weakness." She was showing us exactly how outmatched we were. Velthar closed his eyes. The stories were carefully chosen. Humans fighting wars with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Soldiers who fought for years without rest. Generals who sacrificed millions of their own people to achieve victory. Propaganda? Historical fact. Everything they told us was true. They were not threatening us with what they could do. They were explaining what they had already done to each other. The room fell silent. By the time the first human soldiers landed on our planet, half our population was terrified. The other half was fascinated. They wanted to see these legendary warriors in person. What were the human soldiers like? Ordinary. That was the most disturbing part. They looked like normal beings. No obvious weapons or armor. No signs of the incredible abilities we had heard about in the stories. Velthar opened his eyes. But when the fighting began, they became something else entirely. "Explain." Human soldiers did not just fight our armies. They studied our tactics in real time and adapted faster than we could change our strategies. Every engagement taught them something new about how we thought and moved. Superior training? Superior evolution. These were not soldiers who had learned warfare in schools. These were members of a species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of conflict. The third investigator made nervous notes on his datapad. General Sung Hua Young divided her forces into small units that operated independently. Each unit was led by humans who understood different aspects of Vorthak society. Different aspects? Some units targeted our military communications. Others disrupted our supply lines. Still others spread rumors and propaganda among our civilian population. But the worst units were the ones that convinced our own soldiers to surrender. How? By demonstrating that resistance was hopeless, not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of what motivated us. Velthar's voice became barely audible. Human soldiers would approach our defensive positions and challenge individual Vorthak warriors to single combat. When they won, which they always did, they would offer medical treatment to the wounded enemy. They treated their enemies better than we treated our own wounded. Human medics would save the lives of Vorthak soldiers who had been trying to kill them moments before. They would share their food with hungry enemies. They would comfort dying warriors with words in our own language. The investigators looked confused. This broke our will to fight more effectively than any weapon could have. We are a warrior culture. We understand death in battle. We do not understand enemies who fight to kill you and then risk their own lives to save you. It sounds like mercy. It was calculation. General Sung Hua Young knew that showing mercy to defeated enemies would spread throughout our military. Communications. Every Vorthak soldier would hear stories about humans who fought like demons but treated prisoners like honored guests. Velthar's 4 hands trembled. She was turning our own honor code against us. In Vorthak culture, you owe a life debt to anyone who saves your life. Thousands of our soldiers found themselves owing such debts to human enemies. And this affected their loyalty. It destroyed their loyalty. How can you fight beings who treat you better than your own commanders do? How can you hate enemies who respect your courage and tend your wounds? The lead investigator set down her stylus. But surely your planetary defenses were strong enough to resist invasion. Our defenses were perfect for fighting other Vorthak fleets. They were useless against human tactics. Why? Because General Sung Hua Young was not trying to conquer territory. She was trying to conquer minds. Instead of destroying our cities, she was making our people want to surrender. Velthar's voice cracked. The final phase of the invasion was the most disturbing. Human soldiers began appearing in our cities without fighting their way there. They would simply walk through our defensive lines as if they belonged there. How is that possible? Because by that time, half our defenders thought they did belong there. Vorthak soldiers were helping human troops navigate our cities, sharing intelligence about remaining military units, providing supplies and equipment. Your own people were collaborating? My own people were convinced that humans represented a better future than continued war. General Sung Hua Young had shown them what human civilization could offer. Technology that could heal instead of harm. Knowledge that could build instead of destroy. The second investigator looked pale. She offered to share human medical technology that could extend Vorthak lifespans by centuries. Educational systems that could make our children smarter and stronger. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger on our homeworld. In exchange for surrender? In exchange for joining the human alliance as equal partners, not as conquered subjects, but as valued allies who could contribute their own strengths to a larger community. Velthar closed his eyes again. The war ended not with a battle, but with a referendum. The Vorthak people voted to surrender. They chose to become part of human space rather than continue fighting. And you opposed this? I was one of the few military commanders who understood what had really happened. General Sung Hua Young had not conquered Vorthak Prime through superior firepower. She had conquered it through superior understanding of what we wanted and needed. That sounds like a peaceful resolution. It was the most terrifying military victory in galactic history, because it proved that humans could defeat any species without destroying them. They could turn enemies into allies through pure psychological manipulation. The room was completely silent. General Sung Hua Young had shown that human warfare is not about killing enemies. It is about making enemies choose to stop being enemies, and they are very, very good at it. What happened to you? I refused to surrender. I was captured while trying to organize continued resistance. Most of my fellow officers thought I was insane for opposing such generous terms of defeat. And now? Now I sit in this room trying to warn you about what humans really are. But I do not think you believe me yet. The lead investigator looked at her colleagues. Commander, what you are describing sounds like an advanced form of psychological warfare. Sophisticated, but not supernatural. Velthar opened his eyes and stared at her. You still do not understand. What I have told you about Proxima Centauri, Haven Colony, the Shattered Moons, and Vorthak Prime, all of that happened in less than 3 years. So, humans learned to fight interstellar war in 3 years. They went from simple planetary defense to conquering the most powerful military force in this region of the galaxy in less time than it takes most species to train a single generation of soldiers. They are fast learners. They are something that should not exist, and now that they have finished with us, they are going to turn their attention to the rest of the galaxy. The investigators looked uncomfortable. What do you think they will do? Whatever they want, Velthar said quietly, because there is no one left who can stop them. The 3 investigators sat in uncomfortable silence. The recording device hummed softly in the background. Outside the interrogation room, the sounds of the detention facility seemed muted and distant. The lead investigator finally spoke, her voice uncertain. Commander Velthar, your testimony has been disturbing, but we need to understand something. Are you claiming that humans committed war crimes, or are you claiming something else entirely? Velthar looked at each investigator in turn. His 4 eyes held a mixture of fear and pity. I am claiming that you are asking the wrong questions. You want to know if humans broke the rules of civilized warfare. But you do not understand that humans wrote those rules. What do you mean? I mean that everything I have told you, the tactical brilliance, the psychological warfare, the ability to adapt and learn faster than any known species, all of that represents humans fighting with restraint. The second investigator leaned back in his chair. Restraint? They were following your Galactic Council's rules of engagement. They were trying to minimize civilian casualties. They were attempting to preserve infrastructure and cultural sites. They were showing mercy to defeated enemies. Velthar's voice grew quiet. What I witnessed was not human warfare. It was humans pretending to fight the way other species fight, while still achieving total victory. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense when you understand what humans really are. The lead investigator activated a new recording disc. Then, tell us, what are humans really? Velthar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. During my captivity, I was allowed to access human historical databases. I wanted to understand how they had become such effective warriors so quickly. And what did you find? I found that they had not become effective warriors. They had always been effective warriors. Everything we experienced during our war was nothing new for them. The third investigator frowned. Explain. Humans have been fighting wars for their entire history as a species. Not occasional conflicts over resources or territory. Constant, continuous warfare spanning thousands of years. That is not unusual. Most species have periods of conflict. Most species have periods of peace interrupted by brief wars. Humans have had brief periods of peace interrupted by constant war. Velthar's 4 hands clenched into fists. I studied their military history. In the last 1,000 years alone, they have fought over 15,000 separate wars, major conflicts, involving millions of soldiers and lasting for years or decades. 15,000 wars? That is just the large ones. Humans consider a conflict minor if it only kills a few 100,000 people. They have words for different types of warfare that most species have never even imagined. The investigators exchanged alarmed glances. but they seemed like a peaceful species when we first encountered them. They seemed peaceful because they had temporarily stopped fighting each other, but they never stopped preparing to fight. Preparing how? Every aspect of human civilization is designed around the concept of warfare. Their education systems teach tactical thinking disguised as games and sports. Their entertainment focuses on conflict and competition. Their economic systems are based on resource acquisition and strategic planning. Velthar's voice became strained. Even their language reflects this. Humans have hundreds of words for different types of combat, strategy, and tactics. They discuss business using military terminology. They approach scientific problems like military campaigns. You are saying their entire culture is militaristic. I am saying their entire evolution is militaristic. Humans developed intelligence to hunt more effectively. They developed language to coordinate attacks. They developed tools to kill more efficiently. They developed science to build better weapons. The lead investigator put down her stylus. Other species developed those same capabilities for peaceful purposes. Did they? Or do they just tell themselves that because the alternative is too frightening to consider? Velthar leaned forward as much as his chains would allow. I learned something else from their historical databases. Something that explains everything we experienced during the war. What? Humans are the only known species that achieve spaceflight while still actively fighting wars on their homeworld. The room fell completely silent. Most species develop interstellar travel after achieving planetary peace. They explore space as unified civilizations seeking knowledge and resources. But not humans? Humans developed spaceflight as a military technology. They wanted to build weapons platforms in orbit and establish bases on other worlds to gain strategic advantages over their enemies on Earth. The second investigator looked confused. But by the time we encountered them, they had unified their planet. They unified their planet because they discovered they were not alone in the universe. The moment humans learned about other species, they stopped fighting each other and started preparing to fight us. Velthar's voice became hollow. Every colony ship they sent to other worlds was also a military base. Every trade vessel could be converted to a warship within hours. Every civilian installation was designed to serve as a fortress if needed. They were preparing for war before we ever threatened them. They were preparing for war because that is what humans do. It is what they have always done. What they will always do. The third investigator made nervous notes. The worst part is that they were still learning. Everything they did during our conflict was improvised, experimental. They were testing new ideas and strategies on us. Testing? Captain Lee Jae-won at Proxima Centauri was testing whether small units could hold fixed positions against superior numbers. Lieutenant Park Bo-young at Haven Colony was testing hit-and-run tactics in asteroid fields. Admiral Yoon Da-hee was testing coordinated fleet actions using micro-jumps. Velthar closed his eyes. General Sung Hwa-young was testing whether psychological warfare could replace physical conquest. All of them were learning lessons that they will apply to future conflicts. Future conflicts with whom? With whoever they encounter next. Because now that humans know how to fight interstellar wars, they will continue to expand. It is what they do. The lead investigator looked at her colleagues. Commander, are you suggesting that humans are inherently aggressive? That they will attack other species without provocation? No, Velthar said quietly. I am suggesting that humans do not need to attack other species. Other species will attack them, just as we did. And when that happens, those species will face the same reality we faced, which is that humans have spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for exactly that moment. They have developed every possible form of warfare. They have tested every conceivable strategy. They have built weapons that can destroy planets and tactics that can conquer civilizations. Velthar opened his eyes and stared at the investigators. And they have learned to do all of this while following rules designed to limit civilian casualties and preserve conquered territories for future use. You make them sound invincible. Not invincible. just very, very good at something they have been practicing for millions of years. The lead investigator stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the detention facility. What do you recommend that the Galactic Council do about this? Accept human membership immediately. Grant them every privilege and protection available. Make them partners instead of potential enemies. And if they refuse to join the Council, peacefully, they will not refuse. That is not how humans think. They prefer to achieve their goals through cooperation when possible. But if cooperation fails, Velthar was quiet for a long moment. If cooperation fails, then you will learn what human warfare really looks like when they are not trying to follow galactic rules of engagement. And what would that look like? It would look like the end of galactic civilization as we know it. The investigators sat in stunned silence. "Commander," the lead investigator said finally, "do you have any other observations about human capabilities that we should know about?" "Just one," Velthar said. "Everything I have told you happened 3 years ago. Since then, humans have had time to analyze what they learned during our war. They have had time to improve their weapons, refine their tactics, and prepare for the next conflict, meaning that the humans you might face tomorrow will be even more dangerous than the ones who defeated us yesterday." The recording device clicked off. The interrogation was over. As the investigators gathered their notes and prepared to leave, Velthar spoke one final time. "There is something else you should understand about humans." "What?" "Despite everything I have told you, despite all the terrible things they are capable of, they genuinely want peace. They would prefer to never fight another war." "Then why are you so afraid of them?" "Because wanting peace and being prepared for war are not contradictory for humans. They are the same thing." The lead investigator paused at the door. "What do you mean?" "I mean that humans have learned that the best way to avoid war is to be so good at fighting that no one dares to start one." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Velthar alone with his memories and his fears about humanity's future among the stars.